This story is titled My Ex Left Me and Our Kids Saying, I'll be back in a few years, returned 6 years to nothing, I have divorced her. And before I even get into it, hey everyone, I need your help for a second. We've noticed the channel has been losing a bit of traction lately, and subscribing really is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, it's free, and it genuinely helps us keep bringing you more content like this. Your support means a lot, truly. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now, let's get into the video. Alright, here's my story. I've been sitting on this for a long time, going back and forth in my head, but maybe putting it out there will finally help me make sense of everything. My name's Jake M, and my ex-wife Lisa and I had known each other for 11 years. We met back in high school. She was my first everything. First love, first real relationship, all of it. After graduation, we got married, thinking we'd figure life out together as we went. At least, that's what I believed. Looking back now, it turns out Lisa had a very different idea of what figuring it out actually meant. In the beginning, things really were good. We had 2 amazing kids, a boy and a girl, and I honestly believed we were solid. Sure, Lisa always had a taste for the finer things, but I brushed it off. I told myself she just wanted the best for our family. That's what you do when you love someone, right? You justify things, even when they don't fully make sense. But somewhere along the way, something shifted. It stopped being about us, and slowly started becoming about her. I didn't notice it all at once. It happened little by little. Lisa started spending time with this new group of moms from school. You know the type, always dressed in designer clothes, always talking about luxury vacations in Bali or wherever the next trendy destination was. At first I thought, okay, that's fine. She's making friends. No big deal. But then things started to feel off. Out of nowhere, she began talking about how we needed a nicer car. Then it was trendy outfits for the kids. Then bags, expensive ones. Bags that cost more than our monthly mortgage. At first, I tried to understand it. Maybe this was her way of showing love, or maybe she felt like she needed to step up in some way. But by the time the 5th Gucci bag showed up in our closet, I couldn't ignore it anymore. I remember standing there thinking, what the hell is going on? Was this just a phase? Or was it something deeper, like a shopping addiction? Things didn't just stay uncomfortable. They got worse, fast. Rent started being late. Not once, but multiple times. The credit card bills kept piling up, higher and higher, and it was getting harder to ignore. Every time I tried to sit her down and have a real conversation about it, she'd shut it down immediately. You don't get it, she'd say. I'm doing this for us. Or, you don't understand what it takes to fit in as a mom these days. And every time she said something like that, I'd just sit there thinking, since when did being a mom mean living like a Kardashian? It wasn't just the spending anymore. It was her attitude, her focus. It felt like she cared more about keeping up with that new group of friends than keeping our family stable. It reached a point where I'd come home after a 10-hour shift, completely drained, just hoping for a little peace. And instead I'd find another Amazon package at the door or another shopping bag filled with stuff we didn't need. Meanwhile, I was struggling just to keep up with rent. Trying to talk to her felt pointless. Every conversation ended the same way, like I was talking to a wall. Lisa, you've got to stop. We can't keep living like this, I'd tell her. She'd just roll her eyes. Don't you want your family to have nice things? She'd shoot back, or come up with some excuse about appearances and expectations. And then things got even worse. Work slowed down, my hours got cut, and suddenly money was tighter than ever. I was barely holding things together, scrambling just to keep the lights on. I tried again, more seriously this time, asking her to cut back, just for a while until things stabilized. But she acted like it wasn't even her problem. Don't you want us to enjoy life? She snapped at me. Of course I wanted that. I wanted us to be happy. But how were we supposed to enjoy life when we couldn't even afford the basics anymore? I wasn't asking for anything crazy. Just for her to ease up on the unnecessary spending. Just for her to meet me halfway while we were struggling. Felt like I was carrying everything alone. No support. No understanding. Just more pressure, more stress, more weight being added to my shoulders. I kept thinking maybe she'd come around. Maybe she'd realize what was happening and step up. Maybe we'd face this rough patch together. Because that's what partners do, right? Nope. And then came the night that changed everything. I woke up suddenly and realized Lisa wasn't next to me. At first, I didn't think much of it. Maybe she'd gone for a midnight snack. Then I thought, half-jokingly, maybe she finally got that 3mm. Explore the world urge she always laughed about. Turns out, it wasn't a joke. The house was completely silent. No lights, no sounds. Just me standing there in the dark. And that's when I saw it. A folded piece of paper sitting on her pillow. I remember just staring at it for a moment, like somehow it was going to explain everything before I even touched it. My heart was pounding as I reached for it. Slowly, I unfolded it. The first line hit me instantly. Jake, I need to do this for me. She wrote about how I was holding her back. She wrote about how she'd met someone who could help her explore the world, and how this was something she had always wanted. Always wanted. She said she wished she didn't have to hurt me or the kids. But sometimes you have to leave behind the things that keep you small. And then came the part that really got me. I'll be back in a few years. By then, I'll have experienced the life I've always dreamed of, and we can pick up where we left off. I must have read that line 10 times. Maybe more. I kept going over the words, trying to force them to make sense in my head. She was leaving us for another guy chasing some fantasy of a high life. A few years. Pick up where we left off. Like our lives were just paused. Like some movie she could come back to whenever she felt like it. Couldn't breathe. My hands were shaking as I kept rereading the note. Like if I looked at it enough times, it would somehow change. Like it wasn't real. But it was. Lisa had left me, and our kids, for what? Some illusion of a better life. I grabbed my phone and started calling her. Over and over. It went straight to voicemail. Every single time. I called again. And again. Nothing. At some point, I woke the kids up. I don't even know why. Maybe I thought if they called her, she'd answer. Maybe hearing their voices would make her come back. But no. They tried to. And just like me, all they got was voicemail. My son, who was 12 at the time, looked up at me with these confused, searching eyes and asked, "Is Mommy gone? Did something happen to her?" And my daughter, she was only 8. She looked at me and asked, "Is Mommy in heaven?" That question, it hit me like a truck. I froze. I didn't know what to say. How do you even explain something like that to your kids? How do you tell them their mom didn't disappear? She chose to leave. That she walked out on them? I ended up stammering something about how she was going away for a while. The words felt wrong even as I said them. None of it felt right. After that, I kept calling her. Every few minutes, I'd pick up my phone and try again, hoping this time she'd answer, hoping she'd laugh and tell me it was all some horrible joke. But the only thing I ever got was her voicemail. By morning, reality started to settle in. Slowly, painfully, Lisa was gone, and she wasn't coming back. Not anytime soon. I had 2 kids who needed me, and I had no idea how I was supposed to explain to them why their mom had decided we weren't enough for her. That note, it changed everything. In that moment, something inside me shifted. I stopped being a husband. I had to become something else. A man who had to figure out how to hold his family together, even when the person who was supposed to stand beside me decided we weren't worth staying for. It's crazy how one piece of paper can flip your whole life upside down. After that night, everything felt like a blur. I'd wake up, stare at the empty space next to me in bed, and for a second, I'd wonder if it had all just been some nightmare. But then it would hit me all over again. The first few months, they were brutal. I was trying to juggle everything. Work, bills, raising 2 kids on my own. Before, I had someone there, even if Lisa wasn't the most hands-on mom. Now it was all on me. Packing lunches, helping with homework, cleaning up spills, handling everything. Felt like I was drowning. Every night, I'd collapse into bed completely exhausted, only to wake up the next day and do it all over again. Money didn't make it easier. Lisa's spending had drained most of what we had saved, and now, with just my income, it felt like I was always one step away from falling behind. Every expense felt like a crisis. Every bill made my chest tighten. I'd sit there sometimes, just staring at everything, wondering how the hell I was supposed to make it work. There was a point where I almost gave up. But then I'd look at my kids. They were there, waiting for me, counting on me. So I made a decision. I got my act together. I stopped feeling sorry for myself and started moving. I cut out everything that wasn't absolutely necessary. If it didn't keep the lights on or food on the table, it was gone. I started hustling, picking up every overtime shift I could, taking on freelance work on the side. Nights when I would have normally crashed, I stayed up working instead. It wasn't easy. There were nights I thought I was going to drop from exhaustion. But slowly, things started to change. I started seeing results. I sold off anything we didn't need. That fancy coffee maker Lisa just had to have? Gone. The treadmill sitting in the corner collecting dust? Sold. And honestly, it felt good. Like I was finally taking control again. At home, I made sure the kids were taken care of. I cooked every meal. Found secondhand clothes for them. Tried to make things feel normal again. Planned little outings. Trips to the park. Movie nights. Ben and Ellie. They were stronger than I ever gave them credit for. Yeah, they missed their mom. Bedtime was especially hard for a while. But little by little, they started adjusting. About 6 months after Lisa left, one night, Ben walked into my room. He was holding a picture of her. He handed it to me, looked up at me, and asked quietly, "Do you think she'll ever come back?" Man, that question hit hard. I sat there, just staring at the picture. Back then, life had felt so simple, like we were just your average happy family. For a moment, I wanted to lie to him. I wanted to tell him she'd come back, that everything would go back to normal, that somehow all of this would fix itself. But I couldn't do that to him. Couldn't lie. "I don't know, buddy," I said quietly. "But no matter what, I'm here. We're going to be okay." And over time, things did start to shift. Not in some magical way. Life didn't suddenly get easier. Far from it. But it became manageable. I wasn't drowning anymore. There were no more surprise shopping sprees. No more arguments about money echoing through the house. For the first time in years, I felt like I could actually breathe. And it wasn't just about finances either. Slowly, I started to feel like myself again. I began to take pride in how far we'd come, in how much I had managed to rebuild after everything had fallen apart. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was standing stronger than I had been before. I never planned to do any of this alone. But somewhere along the way, I proved to myself that I could. By the time a year had passed, I realized something that honestly surprised me. I didn't miss her. Not really. I missed the idea of her, sure. The version of her that existed before everything went wrong. But the person who left that note, I didn't recognize her anymore. And that's when it hit me. I couldn't keep carrying this with me. When Lisa left, I remember thinking there was no guide for something like this. No handbook to tell you what to do next. Turns out, there kind of is. It's called a lawyer. I explained everything and filed for divorce. And strangely enough, it felt liberating. Like finally unsubscribing from something you never even signed up for in the first place. Since Lisa was nowhere to be found, the whole process moved quickly. Clean. Simple. It wasn't that I wanted it to come to that, but it was the right thing to do. I sold the house. That place had started to feel less like a home and more like a museum of bad memories. Every room carried something heavy, so I let it go. We moved to a smaller place in a quieter town. The kind of place Lisa would have hated. Not flashy enough. Not impressive enough. But at that point, I didn't care anymore. I was done living for her. Our new home wasn't anything special. Just a small 2-bedroom house on the edge of town. But to me, it felt like a fresh start. And the kids? They adjusted faster than I expected. By the time 3 years had passed, Lisa had become something distant. Almost like a memory that didn't quite belong to my present anymore. At least for me. For Ben and Ellie, it took longer. There were still moments when they'd ask small questions about her. Quiet ones. But eventually, even that faded. It was like they understood, in their own way, that she wasn't coming back. Life settled into something that felt normal. Not the life I had imagined, but something steady, something real. I had my routines, my rhythm. And then, around that time, I started noticing something I hadn't felt in years. Freedom. Not the loud, reckless kind. Not the kind where you run off and leave everything behind. No. This was quieter than that. It was the kind of freedom that comes when there's no constant tension in your home. No one draining your bank account. No one filling the space with endless demands. I could breathe again. I wasn't living paycheck to paycheck anymore. For the first time in a long time, I could even save a little. And without all that chaos around me, I started realizing just how much lighter life could actually feel. I wasn't tiptoeing around moods anymore. I wasn't bracing myself for the next spending spree. I wasn't trying to keep up with someone else's endless need for more. Ben and Ellie noticed it too. They started smiling more, laughing more. Watching them like that, it did something to me. It made me realize that Lisa leaving wasn't the tragedy I once thought it was. It was a reset. One we didn't even know we needed. And I changed too. I wasn't the same guy she left behind. I was sharper, more focused, more confident. About a year after the divorce, I started thinking about the future again. Not in that old way. Not the what if Lisa comes back kind of thinking. That was gone. This time it was different. I wasn't looking over my shoulder anymore, waiting for something to fall apart. I wanted to build something stable, something real, for my kids, and maybe one day for myself too. When it came to dating, I dipped my toes in. Apps, profiles, swipes. It wasn't hard to get attention. Conversations started easily enough. But I wasn't chasing anything. I wasn't looking for someone to complete me or fill some empty space. I didn't want a quick fix or some big, dramatic romance. I wanted a partner, someone who could match my energy, someone who understood my priorities, someone who could fit into the life I had built, not try to reshape it. And then, eventually I reconnected with someone, a woman from the bookstore. Her name was Emily, and she was everything Lisa wasn't. Grounded, kind, real. She didn't care about flashy things or appearances. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. She cared about simple things. Books, her dog, just being herself. We started off as friends, talking about everything. Parenting, life, our favorite books. I took it slow. I didn't want to rush into anything. I'd learned my lesson there. But over time, something shifted. Emily became someone I looked forward to seeing. Someone who made me feel like I could just be myself, without worrying about being judged or measured against anything. For Ben and Ellie, it was an adjustment. At first, they were hesitant. I didn't blame them, but Emily never pushed, never forced anything. She let them come to her in their own time, and eventually, they did. By the time we started officially dating, they adored her. I didn't rush into introducing her to the rest of my life. It wasn't about replacing Lisa or pretending the past hadn't happened. It wasn't about erasing anything. It was about building something new, something better. When I look back at that time now, I can see it clearly. That was the turning point, the moment I stopped just surviving and actually started living. Emily was part of that, sure. She played a role, but it wasn't really about her. It was about finally letting go of Lisa's shadow. The freedom I found wasn't just financial or emotional. It was deeper than that. It was the freedom to imagine a life where I wasn't defined by Lisa's choices anymore. A life where I got to make my own decisions. And then one afternoon, my phone rang. I almost didn't pick it up. I didn't recognize the number. Normally, I would have just let it go to voicemail. But something about it made me hesitate. Something made me answer. The second I saw the caller ID, I froze. It was Lisa. For a moment, I just stared at the screen, like it might explode in my hand. 6 years. 6 years without a single word. No calls. No texts. Nothing. And now, out of nowhere, she was calling me. Part of me wanted to ignore it. Honestly, I almost did. But at the end of the day, we still had kids together. I couldn't just pretend that didn't exist. So I answered. The moment I said, hello, she didn't even pause. She launched straight into it, full panic mode. Jake, what the hell is going on? Who are these people in our house? She yelled. For a second, I genuinely had no idea what she was talking about. What house? I asked. Our house, she snapped, like I was supposed to magically understand. I came back and there are strangers living there, and then it clicked. She was talking about the old house, the one I had sold years ago, after the divorce. Couldn't help it. I almost laughed. Lisa, we don't own that house anymore. It's been sold for years. That's their house now. There was a pause. Just a second. Then she exploded again. Why would you sell our home without telling me? You had no right to do that. I could feel my blood starting to boil, but I kept my voice steady. Calm. There's no our anymore, I said. You left, Lisa. You walked out on us and didn't look back. I didn't owe you anything. She kept going, raising her voice, demanding answers, acting like I had betrayed her somehow. I wasn't about to let her twist things. You weren't here, Lisa, I said plainly. You left. I don't owe you anything. That shut her up for about 2 seconds. Then she let out this dramatic sigh, like she was the victim in all of this, and said, Fine. What's your new address? I need to come home and give my husband and kids a big kiss. I actually laughed, out loud. I didn't even try to hide it. Lisa, I said, shaking my head, we're not yours anymore. I'm remarried. My wife and I, along with the kids, have moved on. You don't have a home here. Silence. For a moment, she didn't say anything. I could almost hear her trying to process it, like gears turning in her head. And then, out of nowhere, she hit me with it. So you're telling me you cheated on me? That one caught me off guard. Cheated, I repeated. Seriously, Lisa? You left us. You walked out, left a note, and disappeared for 6 years. You don't get to call this cheating. You abandoned your family. That's when she completely lost it. She started yelling, saying I was heartless, that I had ruined her life. I stayed calm. I had to. And I told her the truth, even though I knew she wouldn't accept it. Lisa, you're the one who ruined everything. In the 6 years you've been gone, we've had to rebuild. And we realized we don't need you anymore. You made that decision for us the day you left. But she wasn't listening. She doubled down, saying I had no right to move on without her. Like she was entitled to come back and just pick up where she left off whenever she felt like it. And then, I swear, she actually said it. What's your address? I need to come and teach you a lesson. Couldn't help it. I let out a dry, disbelieving laugh. Teach me a lesson? Lisa, are you serious right now? You've got some nerve. She shot back immediately. Selling our home. Moving on. You think you can just erase me like that? Erase you, I repeated, trying to keep my temper in check. Lisa, you erased yourself when you walked out on us. You think you can just show up after 6 years and start calling the shots again? I'm your wife, she practically shouted. I corrected her. I'll admit, I knew I was getting under her skin, and part of me didn't mind. You were my wife. That ended the day you left. Now I have a new wife and the kids, and I have moved on. You don't get to come back here acting like this. She scoffed. Oh, so you think this is all just fine? That I'm gonna sit back while you ruin everything? Give me your address? Or are you too much of a coward? That was it. Lisa, I'm not giving you my address, I said firmly. This isn't your home anymore. We don't owe you anything. You'll regret this, she hissed. I'll make sure of it. And then, she hung up. Just like that. She probably thought she had the last word. But honestly, I just stood there, phone still in my hand, feeling something I hadn't expected. Relief, because the call was over. I just stood there for a moment, staring at my phone, trying to process what had just happened. What was she even thinking? It had been 6 years. 6 years since she walked out on us, disappeared without a word, and now she suddenly thought she could just come back and act like nothing had changed. It was unbelievable. After a minute, I took a breath and called Ben and Ellie into the living room. They came in, a little curious, a little unsure, and I sat them down. I told them their mom had called. I kept it simple. Then I asked them something I had already been thinking about since the call ended. I asked if they wanted to have a relationship with her. I didn't want to make that choice for them. It wasn't my place. Their reaction was immediate. Ben didn't even hesitate. He shook his head and said, "No way. She left us, Dad. Why would I want to talk to her now?" Ellie looked at me, quieter, but just as clear in her own way. "Do we have to?" she asked. I told them no. They didn't have to do anything they didn't want to do. The relief on their faces, it said everything. And in that moment, it really hit me how much Lisa's absence had shaped them. She wasn't the mom they used to remember anymore. To them, she was just a stranger. But Lisa was never the type to just let things go. A few days later, I got a call from one of her relatives. Her cousin, I think. They told me Lisa was furious. Not just upset, furious. And apparently she was planning to come back to town. I didn't know what her endgame was, and honestly, I didn't care. It didn't matter. She wasn't walking back into our lives like nothing had happened. The thing about Lisa, she had this way of twisting reality to fit whatever story she wanted to believe. In her mind, she wasn't the one who abandoned her family. No, she saw herself as the victim, the one who had been wronged. But that wasn't my problem anymore. I had a new life, a stable one, and I wasn't about to let her chaos tear through it again. Still, once Lisa was back in the picture, everything started turning messy again. It was like the 6 years of silence hadn't been enough for her. After that first phone call, I thought maybe she'd realize she wasn't welcome and just leave us alone. I was wrong. Lisa doubled down. She started calling, texting, non-stop. My phone wouldn't stop lighting up. She left these long, rambling voicemails going on about how I had betrayed her, how she deserved to be part of our lives again, like she had some kind of claim over everything. At first, I ignored it. I thought if I didn't respond, she'd eventually stop. But she didn't. Things escalated. One day, she even called while I was at work. I was already on edge, tired of the constant interruptions, so I picked up. "You think you can just replace me?" she snapped the second I answered. "Lisa, what do you want?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "What do I want?" she shot back. "I want my family back." She was practically shouting now. "You had no right to move on without me. We were supposed to pick up where we left off." That phrase again. I couldn't believe I was hearing it. "Pick up where we left off?" I repeated, my voice rising. "Lisa, you walked out on us. You left a note, disappeared, and didn't look back for 6 years. You don't get to show up now and act like nothing happened." She scoffed like I was the one being unreasonable. "I told you I'd be back," she said. "You should have waited for me. That's what families do. They stick together." I felt something snap in me. "Families also don't abandon each other," I shot back. "You didn't care about us when you left, and we don't owe you anything now." That's when she really started throwing accusations. She said I was trying to erase her, that I had brainwashed the kids against her, that I cheated by remarrying. And then she said something that honestly made my jaw tighten. "I hope your new wife knows she's living in my shadow." That was it. I hung up. There was no point continuing that conversation. But Lisa still wasn't done. She started spreading rumors through her extended family, telling anyone who would listen that I had stolen her house and kept the kids from her. Thankfully, most of them weren't buying it. Then came the legal threats. She started claiming that we were still married. Said she was planning to have my marriage to Emily annulled. I actually laughed when I heard that. Couldn't help it. It was like she thought she could just play some kind of reverse Uno card on my life because reality didn't match the story in her head. Like none of the past 6 years counted just because she hadn't been around to contest it. As if she could disappear for years and then come back and declare everything null and void. She was acting like the world had been frozen in place while she was gone. Like everything would be exactly how she left it, just waiting for her to return and pick it back up. The audacity of it, it was honestly mind-blowing. Lisa was so caught up in her own version of reality that she genuinely believed her absence wouldn't change anything. But that's not how life works. And it's definitely not how the legal system works. I had the paperwork. Everything was finalized. She had been notified through every proper legal channel back then. But ignoring reality had always been one of her specialties. She started throwing around legal terms, acting like she had some kind of case, which would have been funny if it wasn't so exhausting. Because the truth was simple. She had abandoned us. She didn't have a leg to stand on. Emily and I talked it through. And honestly, we weren't worried. Not really. Just annoyed. Because at the end of the day, Lisa's threats didn't feel real. They felt like a tantrum. But that didn't make them any less irritating. I sent her a firm message through my lawyer, making it clear that our divorce had been legally finalized years ago and that she had no claim over my life or my family. I really thought that would be enough to shut her down, but Lisa was never the type to go quietly. Around that time, she went into full-on crazy mode. I guess when she realized I wasn't responding to her calls and messages, she decided to go after Emily instead. Somehow, she got her number, don't even ask me how, and started sending her these long chains of completely unhinged texts. Things like, "You think you can just take my place? You'll never be their real mom. You're nothing to them." And another one that said, "Jake is mine and you'll never change that. Don't think for a second this is over." I was seeing red. Seriously, who does that? Emily didn't sign up for any of this. But Lisa still wasn't done. She started spreading rumors about Emily around town, telling anyone who would listen that Emily was a home wrecker and that she had stolen me. It was laughable, honestly, but it still made me angry. I wasn't about to let her keep pulling this kind of stunt. The next day, I went straight to my lawyer and filed for a restraining order. At that point, Lisa was officially out of chances. Of course, she didn't take it quietly. She kept trying to stir up trouble. But at least now I had something to push back with. The restraining order gave me some leverage to shut her down. By the time her attempts to force her way back into our lives had finally run their course, I was done. Completely done. I shut her out in every way I could. Eventually, the calls stopped. The messages dried up. Maybe she finally understood there was no getting through to me, or maybe she just moved on to her next scheme. Either way, the silence felt like relief. For the first time in years, I didn't have to deal with her chaos, and I could focus completely on my family and the life I had rebuilt. It felt like a weight had been lifted, like a reminder that she didn't have any power over me anymore. A few months passed, and life finally felt calm. Work was going well, the kids were doing great, and Emily and I had built something I was genuinely proud of. Then came a work dinner, one of those formal networking events where you shake hands, make small talk, and hope the food is at least decent. I had been invited as a guest of honor for a project I'd led, and everything was going smoothly, until she showed up. Lisa. At first, I thought I was imagining things. But no, she was there, dressed to the nines, hanging off my boss's arm. My heart dropped. Out of all the places she could have appeared, why here? I wasn't even sure if she had seen me yet, so I stayed calm, kept things professional. But Lisa had never been subtle. The moment her eyes met mine, she froze for a split second, then forced this fake smile like she hadn't disappeared from our lives for 6 years. She walked straight over, dragging my boss with her, and started putting on a show. "Jake, wow, I had no idea you'd be here," she said, her voice dripping with fake excitement. I didn't respond, just gave a polite nod and turned back to my conversation. She didn't like that. "Aren't you going to introduce me?" she said, louder this time, trying to draw attention. I still didn't engage. Instead, I excused myself, grabbed my jacket, and started heading toward the exit. That's when she lost it. "Really? You're just going to walk away?" she shouted, loud enough for half the room to turn and stare. "You think you can just erase me from your life? Jake, I am your life." Her outburst stopped me for a moment. I thought about turning around, saying something, putting her in her place right there in front of everyone. But then I looked around, at my boss, my colleagues, complete strangers, and realized it wasn't worth it. So I turned back to her and said calmly, "Lisa, this isn't the time or the place. You need to leave." She kept going, ranting about how I had ruined her life, how I had stolen her family, how she deserved better than this. It was embarrassing. I could feel everyone watching, but I refused to sink to her level. I just shook my head, turned around, and walked out. That night, sitting at home with Emily and the kids, it really hit me how far I'd come. Lisa's outburst didn't shake me. It didn't matter. It was just noise. The life I had now, the family I had rebuilt, that's what mattered. Emily asked me what had happened at the dinner, and when I told her, and she just laughed, shaking her head a little and said, "Sounds like she hasn't changed a bit." "Nope," I said, smiling, "but I have." And that really was the truth. I'm not the same guy Lisa left behind all those years ago. I've grown. I've built something real, something solid. And the best part is, I've got the kind of family Lisa could never understand. A genuine one. Her return might have been chaotic, but it reminded me of something important. I'm done with the past. My focus is on the people who actually matter, the ones who stood by me through everything. And honestly, life has never been better. Thanks for sticking with me, guys. This journey's been a wild one, but I'm proud of where we've ended up. Here's to new beginnings.